Do you struggle with all or nothing thinking when it comes to food, dieting, or exercise? Well, if this is a problem for you, then listen up to today's video. What is all or nothing thinking? Well, it's a thought pattern that is very extreme. It's otherwise known as black and white thinking or dichotomous thinking, where you have very extreme thoughts that there can be no in between. And I commonly see this with people that come to me for help. They're often looking for help with emotional eating, binge eating, or other disordered eating behaviours. Perhaps they are chronically on and off diets. And it's a very, very common thing to see. And they talk to me a lot about their thoughts and their thinking and how it's constantly all around this all or nothing thinking. And the problem is that it really keeps the cycle going of dieting, of binge eating, of emotional eating, because what is happening is that, for example, something happens. For example, they might have a binge, they might eat a forbidden food because they have very strict, perhaps you do too, you have very strict food rules, dietary rules about what you should and shouldn't be eating. And if any of those rules are broken, then the automatic thoughts come in. Eat a piece of cake you think you shouldn't have. I've blown it. I've failed again. I've eaten bad food. I'm a bad person. I'll never do this. And so those thoughts continue. And what generally happens is either somebody will think, oh, well, I've blown it, so I'll just continue eating more. Or afterwards, that it might be that you promise yourself to go on another diet and it being like, I'm starting another diet tomorrow and back into restriction, or even restriction later that day, which takes you very much back into that cycle. So it's a really unhelpful way of thinking and really does you no favours when it comes to trying to heal your relationship with food and your body. Where can you start? How can you break free from this kind of thinking? Well, first of all, it's helpful to, when you're thinking about food, is to remove the moralistic value from your food. Think of all foods are just foods. Yes, we know that some are more helpful for others when it comes to our health, but actually we can eat all foods as part of a balanced diet. That is okay. You don't have to think about the good foods and the bad foods. Let's remove those labels from foods. So instead of thinking about what you can't eat, think about what you can add into your diet. Think about the nourishing food that you can add in to help your body and you feel better. And if you think in that way rather than what I need to leave out, it is a much more helpful way of thinking. Secondly, what I do also with my clients is very much working on cognitive reframing. And this is whereby I teach them to try and notice their thinking. And this sounds a bit strange because you think, well, I kind of know what I'm thinking, but actually a lot of the thoughts that we have are subconscious, they're in there, but they still do the damage. So if we can notice those unhelpful automatic thoughts, and then think about what we can do to reframe that thought. And that doesn't mean say the complete opposite to yourself. Oh, I'm a success, I'm wonderful. Nothing wrong with saying that, obviously, but it has to be something realistic, because actually what we're trying to do is shift your perception of the event, of the situation, rather than completely try and sort of gaslight yourself into thinking something else. It's shifting, because you can have a slightly different perspective of the situation. So if it's something like, I've eaten the cake, I'm bad, you would say, or write down, I notice that I'm thinking I've been really bad because I've eaten the cake. And then reframe that in that it's just a piece of cake, it's not going to make any difference, I'm just going to carry on as normal, or I'm working on my eating habits, this is maybe just a setback, but it's no big deal, for example. That would be more for a sort of binge eating situation, perhaps, where you acknowledge that setback, but that doesn't mean that you've blown everything. So that's something that I do a lot of work on with my clients, as I said, But to do that, it's also really useful to challenge those negative thoughts. So first, notice your negative thought, write it down, and then just challenge it. Because a key thing to remember here is that your thoughts are not in fact facts. They are not facts. They are created by your mind that is trying to fill the gaps. So if you think about all the old beliefs that you have accumulated over the years, it's almost like a computer program in your brain. In the background of your brain, you have all those stored beliefs. You have like a bank of them from when you were a young child growing up. And what your mind does will pluck an automatic thought from that computer program, just as a way to make things easier for itself, but actually it doesn't really make things easier at all. So what we want to do is notice the thought and perhaps even say to myself, this is not a fact. Actually, is this really true? How much do I believe that this is true? What is the evidence to support that this is true? What is the evidence against the fact that this is true? That's something you can really do. Start to just challenge those thoughts. If it's, I'm a failure because I've eaten cake, is challenge that. What's the evidence to suggest you're a failure? Now, one of the things that I find that my clients do a lot is really focus on the things that have gone wrong. And so you might go to those things. You might say, well, I did this yesterday and did that. But they never focus on the wins. So one of the things you can also start doing is writing down, of being aware, of acknowledging your wins. Really, really important. No matter how small, what went well for you every day, write it down. And it could be as much as, I went out for a 10-minute walk, which I haven't usually done. It could be, I've decided to add in some different coloured vegetables into my diet to sort of help nourish my body today. That's something new, add that in. That's a win. So really focus on the wins. And the final thing that I'm going to say is about my cycle ride analogy. And this is something that is so key to remember. So I often say to my clients, when you are on this journey of healing your relationship with food and your body, imagine it like a cycle ride. You've started, perhaps they've come to the first session and they've made that start. And no matter what happens, if they hit any bumps in the road, if there's a setback along the way, which inevitably there will be because that's normal, that's okay. You just get yourself back on your bike, dust yourself down and get back on. You have not gone back to the start line. You have already learned things. You're already on a journey. And that is a really key thing to visualize when moving away from all or nothing thinking. You are on a journey. It's normal to have setbacks. You're learning all the time and you're moving forward. So I hope that's really helpful for you today. And just to say, if you are struggling with your relationship with food, please do download my Breaking the Cycle guide. It's a free guide to help you take your first steps. And I think this will really help you with your all or nothing thinking too. So I will leave the link to that nearby wherever you're watching this video. Have a go at it, and I hope that helps.